have a follow-up question for you. So you provide an injury service. Let's say I got into accident and got injured. Like, God forbid, I hope it's not going to happen, cross finger. But if it happens, what are the steps that I need to do? And what are the common mistakes that people do after injuries?
Well, typically when you're involved in an accident, you have to first report the accident to your insurance company, right? So in the province of Ontario, it's mandatory for everyone to have insurance coverage. So if you're driving a car, you have an insurance company that will provide what we call accident benefits. You have to report the accident immediately to your insurance company first and foremost.
Is there a limited day or like hours that you have to report?
Yeah, you want to report to your insurance company within 7 days of the accident.
Okay.
Right, so you want to get on that ASAP, right? And then of course, if you don't, it doesn't mean that you won't be able to pursue what we call an accident benefits claim ever. You can't. You just have to provide a reasonable explanation as to the delay, because sometimes there are legitimate reasons. So an accident benefit claim is different from a tort lawsuit.
Okay.
So an accident benefit claim is a claim against your own insurance company, and that operates a thing what we call a no-fault insurance regime. So it doesn't matter if you're at fault for the accident, you can still claim what we call accident benefits. A tort lawsuit is a lawsuit that you bring against the at-fault driver. Mm-hmm. And there's a 2-year statute of limitation period for you to bring your lawsuit.
And that's where you come in?
So I come in on both.
Okay.
Because the tort lawsuit, typically I don't get that started until really around the 2-year mark. Because there's a certain threshold test that you have to pass in order for you receive a tort lawsuit, and usually around the 2-year mark is when you get a sense of the severity of someone's injuries. That's when someone's injuries technically plateau, right? So before we kickstart the tort lawsuit, usually around the 2-year mark, sometimes earlier, sometimes at the 1-year mark, I ensure my clients get access to accident benefits, income replacement benefits, medical rehabilitation benefits, non-earner benefits, things like that, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's what they need to kind of get them by if they can't work. They get some income replacement benefits, if they need treatment for the rehabilitation, get that going until I get the tort lawsuit started.
I was reading about you and I found something very interesting. There's a lady that you changed her policy from $65,000 to $1 million. Not only that, you changed the Ontario law. Yeah. I was like, wow, how does that happen?
So this was a particular client. She was an Indigenous girl, teenager. She was a mother of a disabled infant at the time, and she was involved in a serious motor vehicle accident where she sustained a catastrophic traumatic brain injury. So of course her parents were devastated. She also suffered multiple fractures in her spine, elbow, and hip as well. Her parents were devastated because initially there's policy limits that she was dealing with at the time of $65,000. They could be lower if you have a minor injury, but she clearly did not. So it was set at $65,000. When you start to look ahead in terms of the cost of the rehabilitation treatment, her mother and everyone around her knew that $65,000 might seem like a lot, but that's not going to be enough for her to complete her full rehabilitation to reach her maximum medical recovery. So what was needed was for her to get what we call a catastrophic impairment designation, where if you meet certain criteria in the statutory accident benefits schedule, which is a regulation under the Insurance Act, that would increase your policy limits from $65,000 to $1 million. So based on a traumatic brain injury, I reviewed the criteria. I'm very familiar with it. And right off the bat, I knew that she met the criteria. I got a second opinion from a neuropsychologist, a PhD. She agreed with me. The insurance company retained a neurologist. The neurologist agreed with us as well. So I thought, case closed, right? Mm-hmm. Well, no, not so fast.
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise. The insurance company found a bureaucratic glitch in the criteria to get that CAT designation, and they exploited it to the fullest. It was basically revolving around the fact that one of the criteria was that you had to be admitted as an inpatient to a hospital that's mentioned in a guideline. And the hospital that my client was admitted to as an inpatient, even though it was a level 1 trauma center, was not on that particular guideline. And when you look closely at the guideline, the hospitals that were mentioned were hospitals, level 1 trauma centers that were located to major metropolitan cities. But if you're involved in an accident, you live out in the country, in a rural, more remote area, and you get admitted to a level 3 trauma center, you most likely will get transferred to a level 2 trauma center, to a hospital not on that list, which is exactly what happened to my client. So based on that, the insurance company denied the catastrophic impairment designation. So my client was devastated. Her mother, her family were devastated. They didn't know what they were going to do. So I took a deep dive. I dug deep. I studied the catastrophic impairment definition evolution from the 1990s all the way to the present. I interviewed some of the doctors who were hired or retained by the Minister of Finance to provide recommendations when they wanted to amend the law, to get their perspective on the kind of the medical basis and foundation for the criteria. And then I started to get, so once I started to do that, I eventually persuaded the insurance company to overturn the decision. And that was great for my client and family. I increased their policy limits from $65,000 to $1 million, and I was happy for them. But at that point, I started to realize, you know what, my duty extends beyond just a mere retainer. It extends beyond a mere retainer to the larger community. I started to think, well, what's going to stop the insurance company from taking advantage of that bureaucratic glitch in legislation to deny another child in the future who's sustained a traumatic brain injury who lives in a more remote area? And how many times have they done that in the past? So at that point, I decided I was going to change the law. So I started to get a lot of media attention. I started to, I was featured in newspaper articles. I started to write a lot about it. I got legal organizations like Outlaw involved. And eventually, I got to sit down at the table with the Financial Securities Regulation of Ontario, Authority of Ontario, which regulates the Insurance Act. And I persuaded them to amend the guidelines. And it reminded me that one decision, from the insurance company affects one child and one family. But if you can change the law, then that impacts thousands of children and thousands of families throughout the entire province of Ontario. So I did that, and I still have more work to do in that regard. But I was happy with the initial result, and that's what inspired me actually to write my book.
We're gonna talk about that. But before the book, I've been reading, and then there was a testimonial about you. You do sometimes pro bono.
Yes.
What inspires you to do that?
So with the work I did to change the law, that's an example of pro bono work, right? When I went out and I was bringing attention to this issue with this particular bureaucratic glitch I mentioned that had discriminatory ramifications based on geography that affected marginalized groups, visible minorities living in more remote areas, I was getting paid for that. But when I feel like there's an imbalance of power between a bigger institution and individuals, especially marginalized groups, that really pulls my heartstrings. And you get to a point where, most people aren't going to take up that job because they're not going to get paid for it, but you still realize the need that it has to be done. And just doing the right thing, something that my parents and my grandmother instilled into me at a very early age, is of the utmost importance to me. And you have that mentality, if I don't do it, who else will do it? And if I don't do it, how many other people are going to continue to feel the consequences of this ridiculous law, right? So I'm motivated by the people I serve, right? For me, once I hear their stories, that's important. So, every client that I get, the first thing I always make sure I do is I visit their house. Which is something I'll always do. I visit their house. I get to know them, and I get to know their immediate family and their loved ones. I want to hear their story. Their story compels me. I want to know what their life was like before the accident. I want to know how this particular accident and the injuries and impairments they sustained devastated them and adversely impacted their ability to function afterwards. And the impact that not only has on them, but also their family and their loved ones. That really gets me more motivated when I learn more about them, to fight for them, and then to take on social justice issues like this one.
I don't know what to say, really. I am speechless. Let's talk about your book.
Sure.
And you are a couple of awards winner.
Yes.
Right? Tell us about the award that you won and the book. What inspired you to write?
So what inspired me to write the book was the same story I was telling you about with my Indigenous clients. I wanted to raise more awareness of it, and I wanted to get the word out. So that was the initial motivation. But then I started to think to myself, is this just an issue that affects my province that I live in? Or is this an issue that affects other insurance regimes in other provinces throughout Canada? Basically, is this a provincial issue or is it a national issue? So part of the book was bringing attention to the issue that existed in my province. But then I started to explore the other insurance regimes in all the other provinces and territories of Canada to see if there was also this issue of discrimination based on geography. Once I did that comparative analysis, then I started to think, well, how can we address this issue on a national level? So the final section of the book makes recommendations on how to address this issue, right? In terms of awards, last year I was blessed and fortunate and grateful to be nominated for Best Law Firm. So that was an award handed out by MacLeod, which is a company that provides legal software, primarily to lawyers in the States, but also Canada. And I heard yesterday they're venturing out into Australia and also Europe. So that was in Nashville, Tennessee. So I was a little nervous when I got, because there's never been a Canadian law firm to win that award. Okay. So I didn't think I was going to win. So when I found out.
So you were the first one?
First Canadian lawyer, yeah. They've been doing it for, I think, 9-10 years. So that was that was a huge event for me because just starting out, to see someone recognize the work that you're doing. So that was great and a big honor. And then in November last year, I was nominated by the Canadian Association of Black Lawyers for the Advocacy Award. Again, for the work that I did changing the law and the work that I did for my Indigenous client and other Indigenous clients that I represent from the 6 nations of the Grand River Reserve.
That's amazing. Okay, what's the title of your book and where can people find that? And then I'm sure after hearing this, a lot of people are interested to call you. Where can they find you? How they can contact you? Can you explain that?
Sure. So the name of my book is Catastrophic Impairment Law in Canada. And my book publisher is LexisNexis Canada, Inc. So if you want to get the book, you can visit lexisnexis.ca. And there should be a buy book online tag on that page where you could find my book. You can just type in the name, Catastrophic Impairment Law in Canada, my name, Andrew Rudder, and then you'll find it. So I've signed away all my rights to them, so they're the only ones who can sell my book. I can't. And then if you want any more information on me, the best way to do that is to visit my website, which is rudderlawgroup.ca. That's rudderlawgroup.ca. I also have a YouTube channel because I have a vlog that I put out where I give personal injury lawyer tips to people, try to give value to people, answer questions, commonly asked questions, to just to provide more information to people. Even if they don't hire me, they can learn something about it and make more informed decisions, right?
Well, you heard that, people. You know where to find him, YouTube, his website, and everything. Andrew, thanks for coming. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Andrew. It was an absolute pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you so much. This was our show for today. Thanks for watching. Next time. See you next time.